Varsha, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here.
I was reading a little bit about the work that you do and your profile, and I thought that you have quite a unique story, quite a unique background. And the first question I wanted to ask you is that how has those past life experiences shaped who you are now? So shaped your vision, your purpose, your why? I know it's a very difficult question as a first question, but yes.
Yeah, let's jump into it. Maybe the best way to answer that is through a story. And it's a story of this little girl who lived in a little town in the middle of South Africa with a huge family and a father that taught her about self-acceptance, taught her about unconditional love, and taught her about serving a purpose higher than herself. And growing up, this little girl growing up in this world thought that life was ideal and this is it. Until one day, her dad passed away. And she, for the first time in her life, experienced darkness and understood turmoil and understood or felt lost and groundless and tetherless. And 6 months later, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. And she...
6 months after the death of her
Yeah, 6
father.
months after my dad passed away, diagnosed with breast cancer. And she recognized that this was a point in her life where she had to make a decision. She was either going to survive or she was going to follow the darkness. And it was very tempting to follow the darkness. But just as much, she had the light. She had the light of her siblings and people that loved her so fiercely. And she followed the light. So she made the choice to follow the light. And she overcame that cancer and was declared a survivor.
How old were you then?
I was 24. I was 24.
So young.
Yeah. And at that age, when I was declared a survivor, something in me clicked. And this little girl decided that cancer was not going to define her. And the word survivor was not going to define her either. Because at 24, at 25, there's your whole life ahead of you to be lived. And so cancer can't be the life. It has to be a chapter in the life. And so she survived and she thrived and she, I think in some ways, evolved from this little town girl to this fierce woman that was unapologetic and that went for what she wanted. And along the way, she met her equal and they moved to this island paradise in Mauritius. And another miracle happened where she had a little baby boy. And this was, I think, in many ways, the confirmation or the message that life is worth living. And everything that she had learned, she could now teach to this little gift, this little being. And life made sense finally. And 2 years later, she heard the war drums beating again. And she got called to put on her armor as she was diagnosed with breast cancer a second time. So I was 34 at that time.
Is it the same type as the first time?
It had actually metastasized and it was more aggressive the second time.
Right.
So it was quite rare for that to happen. It was very rare for somebody to get a second breast cancer diagnosis 10 years later. And even rarer for that breast cancer to have become HER2 positive, so it's a more aggressive type.
Right.
So it was pretty rare, and my doctors in Mauritius, my oncologist in Mauritius and South Africa were stumped, and I think my medical team and I have a very good sense of humor about it. So we talked about opening up the war chest and, me being this amazingly unique person and how awesome it is for them to be able to figure things out And how awesome of me to be so gracious of while they figure things out. But I do find that having a sense of humor helps. So a different type of cancer, but still breast cancer. And this little country girl felt like she was back there.
And back in that darkness.
Back in the darkness, tetherless.
Did you ask yourself at the time, why? The reason I asked that is that I had a really fascinating discussion last week with a general practitioner, and he was telling us, the limitation of medicine, because it tells us how. It might tell us from a physical perspective what is the cause of that, but it never tells us why. Some people find solace in religion, some people find solace in spirituality. Is why something that occurred to you, or you just embraced it? It's happened. I've got to survive this, full stop.
I definitely asked why. I asked why me, especially on the hard days when I couldn't get out of bed, especially on those days when I did not want to be pricked 10 million times because my veins are so thin and fragile and calcified. Yes. I asked why me for, the 5th time I went in for an operation, or I had to leave my son at daycare so that I could do radiation. I asked why me a million times, especially because a lot of who I am is intellectual, or my identity is intellectual. And understanding for me was a way for liberation, until I learned that question would never be answered. And I needed to be able to let it be. And so instead of asking why me, I choose to ask, so what? What can I do about this? Because why not me? Yeah. What's special there? Why not me? These things happen. Bad things happen to good people. And my life is testament to that. And the people I coach is testament to that. Bad things happen to good people, so why not me? It's churning water, asking why me. What I do have choice in is asking myself, so what am I going to do about this? Yes. That's the challenge. Yes. So what am I going to do about this? What lesson am I teaching my child? How am I going to role model that when life punches you in the gut and you doubled over and you don't know if you're going to get up, how are you going to do that? What choices are you going to make when you are down there on the floor? So yes, I've asked myself that a million times, and I've released that a million times, and I've stepped into that fierceness of, well, how am I going to choose to respond to this? And I have found that very empowering in my cancer journey, as well as in life in general.
Did you have to dig very deep? So for example, did you have to, obviously you had a wonderful child and you had your other half, but did you have to dig deeper than that to find that strength to say, I'm going to beat this, I am going to beat this?
I'll be honest, I had to dig deeper the first time because I felt more alone.
Because you had just lost your dad as well.
Yeah, I just lost my dad, so I was already in the deep. And the second time, it was a matter of hours. I mean, I got my diagnosis. We said, let's, give us a few minutes, and we need to go to the parking and, just be in nature. And it was easy, actually, because I had this person sitting next to me holding my hand, not saying anything, actually, just holding my hand, and that was enough. That was enough, knowing that I didn't need somebody to placate me. I didn't need somebody to buffer me up. I was already strong enough. I needed your silence, and I got that. And sitting in the parking lot, got that decision within me that I get to choose here. I get to choose. I get to role model to my kid, my son, what it is like to fight. Whether I survive or not, I had to role model that. And how many kids get that opportunity? And how many parents get that opportunity? So it was much easier the second time around. I was able to process that, and for that to anchor deep within me. It was easier the second time around.
Did you come to to peace with the fact that it could work out one way or another, or in your head you were going to survive this? What kind of mindset did you have at the time?
Actually, a little bit of both. The first time round, I had the strategy, and this was the strategy, very easy. Win the battle in my head, and my body would follow. And that was the strategy, that's what brought me up, and that's what I did, and I felt really strong, and I was supported really well in that. The second time round, I really felt it because I had so much more to lose.
Of course.
And actually, preparing to die taught me how to live. So it actually gave me the courage to be fierce, to live beautifully, to grab what there is to grab, to have the quiet moments, to know, to discern what's really important in this moment. So preparing to die actually helped me to live a better life.
And do you find yourself nowadays coming back to that moment where you need grounding to have that sense of perspective? Did that shape, coming back to the initial question, did that shape how you now think about life in general? I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. That being a cancer survivor twice and having struggled with other health issues since then, this mortality for me is something that's very close. I understand it viscerally. And so I come back to it a lot. And it shapes in many ways the way I engage with life.
And does that in turn affect how you choose to coach?
Absolutely, 100%. Because at the end of the day, I come back to this little girl from the country who has these amazing role models that set her up. And she's doing her part. She's shining her light, and she understands what it's like to be lost and to have other people shine a light for her. And so that's what she wants to do. She wants to shine a light for other people. She wants other people to remember that they are light as well, and that sometimes that light within us will dim.
Yes.
And that's okay, because it can reignite, it can glow again, and you can find somebody else that's willing to share their light for you. So that is a theme that permeates all aspects of my life, very much so in my coaching.
You spoke about shadow earlier, and I'd like to come back to that and explore that a little bit. I think, one of the, and correct me if I'm wrong, one of the ways that you coach is that you empower people to embrace both sides. Do you think generally the people you come across, are they aware that they have this shadow in them? Do you think that there's that level of self-awareness and understanding? Because I think some of us are sleepwalking through life, and there's no judgment there, just kind of general observation. Do you have to teach them to recognize or identify the very existence of that shadow, let alone how to deal with it?
Yeah. I think in many ways we feel the discomfort, and this is what maybe brings them for us to meet, or brings them to sit across from me. It's the discomfort of the shadow side. For me, it's the invitation to explore deeper within ourselves. So yeah, for many people, they are aware that there's a discomfort. There is this part of me that wants to be heard, or there's a part of me that feels uncomfortable within me, and it's stopping me from being whole. When I work with them, I show them that for there to be a shadow, there has to be light. So if you think about when you were a little girl, we saw these long shadows behind us or in front of us, and we played with these shadows, and we were not afraid of these shadows.
Tried to outrun them, or
yeah, exactly. We were playful. We also understood at some level that shadow was us. It came from us. We were not afraid of it. But somewhere along the line, as we become adults, we forget. We lose sight of that. And when we see that shadow, that makes us feel uncomfortable. We feel anxiety, we feel fear. But it's just us. It's just maybe sometimes your brilliance. It's your light. And that shadow is part of you. And so the work for me is about normalizing that shadow is part of you, that we all have scars, we all have had difficult times in our lives. And part of those difficult times, there's gifts in that, and those gifts have shaped who you are. It allows you to maybe shine your light better. And when we integrate that, when we connect back to that child that, loved that shadow, played with that shadow, accepted that shadow, did not judge that shadow, when we bring that energy into our lives as adults, we can see it for what it is. And we can help integrate it so that we are taking the best from it. No one person is perfect.
Of course.
We are our scars and our brilliance. And when we are able to align and connect to both sides, this is when we connect to who we really are. And we show up so amazingly in the world. And that's what the world wants from us.
Yes, absolutely. And I'd like to connect that with the work that you do, particularly as regards women, because I'm not saying men don't need empowerment, but I think women, we are obviously very special, but I think also a lot of the time we are limited by ourselves. I'm not saying there aren't external factors, but I think a lot of the self-limiting beliefs generated by societal conditioning, etc., means that a lot of women don't realize their full potential, don't realize what they're capable of. So in your experience, what are the sort of the main hurdles that you've identified that holds us back as women?
Well, actually, main hurdles. I'm thinking in my mind about an HBR study I read recently about women in female-led industries, and how even women in female-led industries feel the bias. And I found that really, really fascinating, that women in female-led industry feel like there is this glass cliff. And that was a new concept to me. So the glass cliff is where they feel like they're being blamed for things that are outside of their control.
Right.
Women in these industries feel like they are still being mansplained, that they feel that they need to make choices because the organizations and the cultures have not yet created environments for them to be able to have work and personal lives. They feel like they need to be humble and not, kind of speak about their accomplishments too much, that they need to not be too fierce or not speak too loud or too soft, or, there's always this too much or this too muchness. And I was really surprised to find that this is a study in female-led industries where females make up more than 50%. And what that said to me is that a lot of what we are doing right now and a lot of what we are saying is increase females in the organizations. And it's this, increase females still and everything's going to be changed.
Just a number.
Yeah. But it's not. It's not changing, and it's not going to change. And that for us to change, we need to not just say it's women. We need to say our systems, our organizations, our society, all of that has to change, that we as a community need to shift so that women don't feel the anxiety and the overwhelm and the burnout, which, they feel that is happening as a result of systems that do not support us. And I don't think that's healthy for the employees that they lead.
Yes.
I think that's really hard.
Because it's perpetrating, to some extent, it's perpetrating the same biases, except that we're saying it's female-led, but that in itself doesn't mean much, as you said, if it's just a number.
Yeah, I thought that was fascinating to open up my eyes and say, well, yes, we definitely need more women, but we also need systems to change. It's the same for imposter syndrome. It's not a real syndrome. It isn't, It's something that we're using to label women. And that's not fair.
True.
Because the systems aren't helping. Yeah. So I do feel that there are things that we as women leaders can do to be able to, what's the word, navigate, to be able to navigate these kind of spaces. I do think that we as women can do things differently, and maybe I can share that if looking at the gendered space.
Yes.
These are some things that we as women can do. The first thing is that we need to lead ourselves so that we can lead others.
Okay.
And here primarily we're talking about emotional agility.
Okay.
We're talking about being able to connect to our own emotions, to be able to understand what this means, to hear the messaging of those emotions. What are these emotions telling me?
How do we do that? Again, I'm coming back to and I find this area fascinating because I think it requires much more work than just going to see a coach, because it requires deeper inner work as well. And I go back to that point about, I think a lot of people, maybe myself included, who knows, are not particularly self-aware. So how do you dig deep to identify what emotions are you feeling?
Yeah. Well, maybe the first part is coaching is inner work. It is deep inner work, and that you need to be prepared to peel the layers back. It's part of the process. It's part of the joy and the pain, and you have to go through it to get to the other side. The second thing is that when we look at emotions, it doesn't actually need to be deep. It's there, it's present. We just maybe repress, suppress, or deny it. It's already there. It's functioning at all levels and at all interactions. It's there. Maybe something easy I could suggest is learning to name the emotion. What's present here? What am I feeling in this moment? I had a difficult interaction with somebody, and what feelings coming up here? I am experiencing anger. Well, anger as an emotion lets us know that there's a possible boundary being crossed. There's an injustice happening. And so what am I going to do about it? If there's a boundary being crossed, how do I set up better boundaries? How do I talk about this boundary? What do I do about this boundary? And that emotion has led us into resourceful thinking. Right? And meaningful action. Or if there's an injustice happening, how am I choosing to respond to this injustice? What am I going to do about it or not do about it? And if I'm not going to do something about it, that's a conscious choice. And boom, we're back into control. We're back into that space where we are resourceful and we are taking meaningful or values-aligned action. Does that?
Yes, no, that makes complete sense. So I was trying to think of an example that I could bring on a professional level. So I sometimes encounter women who feel incredibly frustrated because they didn't get that promotion that they felt they deserved and didn't. So on the one hand, there's this anger and frustration because they felt they deserved it. But on the other hand, they have a mortgage to pay, they have bills to pay, they have obligations, so they feel deep fear that they're going to lose their job or rub the employer the wrong way, so they end up not doing anything. So is the work that you do part of the work that you do to teach them how to deal with this fear and how to stand up for themselves ultimately?
Yeah, absolutely. So fear in itself is a debilitating emotion. It's something that is protecting us when our survival is at stake, and it keeps us safe. So when we start looking at fear from the perspective of keeping ourselves safe, we can start becoming more resourceful and saying, what are the ways in which I can keep myself safe, maybe from a financial perspective, maybe from an work experience perspective, maybe from a career perspective. What are the ways in which I can keep myself safe and also balance that anger that I feel with the injustice? So emotions just help us to navigate difficult situations when we are able to understand the need of that emotion.
When you coach these women, do you come up with a plan, or you basically help them identify these emotions and what needs to be done, and then they have to adapt it to the situation in hand? Or do you come up with a strategy, a professional strategy, as to how to kind of get to the next level in their career, for example?
So very much for me, coaching is like dancing. Okay. And it's dancing in the moment. So being caught in the thunderstorm outside and choosing, am I going to run for cover or am I going to dance in the rain? And I am a dancer in the rain.
Yes.
So I take that metaphor in the coaching as well. So we talk about what's coming up in the moment. For your example, where somebody maybe is feeling fear and anger, we explore it. We explore it deeply. We look at where it might be coming from, what are maybe some limiting beliefs attached to it, what are the messages of that emotion, and what would you like to do about it? We move from the exploration to the so what. How do we activate this? How do I align to what's important to me, to my sense of self-worth, and having that alignment, from that space of alignment, what am I going to do next? What is my strategy? What are my actions? Where am I going to go with this? And what could go wrong? What could possibly go wrong? And what I found is knowing what could go wrong helps fortify us a little bit as women. Yes. Kind of knowing what's the plan B, what am I going to do? And we feel more confident having worked through that process. So when you leave a coaching session with me, you might leave with a plan. I'm very clear, A, B, C, what I'm going to do. Or you might leave with more questions, because as we have worked through this, you've uncovered maybe something deeper there that has been symptomatic of this issue.
And it could be something so simple as maybe this career is not for me.
Exactly. And you walk out with kind of much more questions, which leads to a deeper awakening and a deeper awareness of yourself, which is just wonderful.
It is wonderful. Yeah. And it brings me to the next question I had. And I think it's related to some of the things that you've been saying. When I was reading your profile, I saw how you combine different methods and methodologies of teaching, and also draw from what neuroscience can teach us. I think the brain is a wonderful thing. I think we were talking about Van Gogh just before starting, and I was telling you about this thing that I heard recently about all these wonderful ideas already in existence in the universe, and it's about whether we can tap into them or not. So how does what you've learned from neuroscience help you to craft your coaching methods, as it were?
So I'm a great believer in hope. And with my life experience and with everything I've been, hope has always been this quiet voice that's pulled me through the hard times. And neuroscience is something that gives me tremendous hope. There's this little concept called neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity is the ability of the brain to rewire itself. So at any point in your life, you can create a new neural pathway, and you can learn a new behavior. You can create a new habit, and you can have a whole new life. That's just fascinating. That gives me hope that no matter what happens, we can choose to respond differently, and we can choose to consistently respond differently until that consistency becomes our new norm, our new ways of doing things. And we can choose to respond positively to life. We can choose to see the light. And this is what neuroplasticity offers us, which I love.
It's wonderful. And I've been listening to this amazing neuroscientist called Dr. Andrew Huberman.
I love
him. I'm obsessed. And it's weird because I'm not a scientist. I don't have any medical background. His podcasts are incredibly technical, and they're about 3 hours long each. But I don't know, the way he presents it is in such a digestible way. And he had one on neuroplasticity. And like you said, it kind of almost puts the old saying that a leopard never changes its spots to the test, because it says actually it can. Just got to rethink the way that you think. And do you find your coachees are open to that suggestion?
suggestion of neuroplasticity.
Yes, exactly. Are they open and receptive to the fact that they can create a whole new self?
I think sometimes it's very sad for me to be in coaching sessions when I realize that the person sitting opposite me hasn't realized that they can grow and that they can change, that they feel stuck and they operate from these stuck places and they in many ways lose hope. And so when we talk about neuroplasticity, I talk about, would you like to run the marathon? If you wanted to run the marathon, do you just get up one day, lace up your shoes and run? No.
Of course, we practice.
We practice, we train, we make different choices. And this is neuroplasticity. So we talk about it, we talk about how we're building the muscle to be able to do something different, to respond different. And just this idea of the possibility of being different gives so much of hope that people run with it and they sprint with it and they grow and they open. And it's fascinating that once you open a door for somebody, that they go through it and they are different people.
And it must be a particularly powerful tool for the cancer survivors that you coach as well, because you've got that aspect of your coaching as well, because I think a big element of it is hope and the fact that it's not necessarily a cure in itself, but how you choose to live through that experience could have an impact on the outcome. Is that a big part of what you do as well in your coaching?
So when we think of the cancer journey, there's different parts to it. There's of course the shock and the anger and all of the very hard emotions that come just at diagnosis. And then there's the journey. And the journey is really, really hard. But in many ways, for many of us, we are accompanied by our medical team, by our families and our friends, and our corporates as well, our organizations that support us in many ways. And then there's this big party and you ring the bell and I have survived, rah, rah. And everyone's jubilant and you're not.
Why?
Because everyone expects you to go back to who you were.
Oh, you're fine now. You're well
okay.
again.
Yeah, you're okay. Can you come back and draft these things? And can you come back to being this fantastic do-it-all mother and wife? And oh yeah, by the way, all this healthcare, this supportive team that was there and telling you what to do and what drugs to take and what regimen and was answering all these questions for you, suddenly they're gone. And you alone. And you feel confused because you should be jubilant. But you're confused and you're scared and you're anxious and you cannot go back to who you were and you don't know who you should be. And that's a scary place to be. And that's where I focus in on.
Right.
So I actually marry my skill as a coach with my experience through this journey, having been through it twice, in helping people or women craft their lives. What life do you want to live? We are inevitably asking ourselves this question. We are asking ourselves, how do I want to live? Is this the life I want to live? I've been given the second chance, or third chance in my case. How do I want to live? So we are asking ourselves these questions and nobody else is. Nobody else sees this. So we have this opportunity here to partner with somebody that's been there, that's walked the path and that can separate and ask the questions and accompany you and normalize this and say, yes, it is hard. And yes, it's okay to mourn the person you've lost because there is a mourning there.
Yeah, so it's as you said, whilst the rest of the world is obviously relieved that you've made it through this journey, part of you is, as you said, you're you're a different person at the end of the journey than you were at the beginning, and everyone else is so happy that they fail to see that only you can live through it. Yeah.
And you feel bad. You feel bad because everybody, is celebrating for you, and you feel bad because you survived. There's other people that are not surviving. There's other people that are passing away. I have a cousin, and we grew up together. Right. She was the same age. We were a few months apart, and we spent every vacation together. We shared every life moment together. And I had cancer before her, and then she had cancer, and she didn't survive. She did lose the battle, and she has kids. Her daughter is 10 days younger than my son.
Gosh.
And
so then you ask yourself, why did she not survive? Why did I survive? And I think there's a roller coaster of emotion that goes down that journey as well.
Yeah. Well, I ask myself now that I'm here and this is what's happened. How do I honor her memory? How do I honor her life? Because she lived so largely, so beautifully. She was that calm space in my turbulence. She took me in at a very difficult time in my life when I was surviving cancer and I was in that darkness. And I want to be able to do that for others. And as survivors, there's a lot of that guilt.
Yeah, survivor's guilt.
Yeah, there's a lot of this, why was I chosen to survive? She was the good person.
Oh.
Right? And why is it fair that her daughter gets to grow up without a mom and mine does? And how do I honor that memory? How do I not stay in this self-pity? How do I not make this about me? How do I honor that memory?
And I think the upbringing that you had, you spoke about your father at the beginning and how he taught you to find a meaning larger than yourself in life. That must be a source of inspiration for you as well. What he taught you.
It's a source of groundedness. It's where I go to find myself.
And I'm sure he's somewhere listening.
Yeah.
And how do your family embrace your coaching aspect of you? Does your son know that's what you do, for example, for a living?
Yes, he was very excited that I was coming to meet you.
Oh, bless him.
So my husband and I are maybe very practical as parents. I was already perimenopausal when my son was born.
Is that related to?
It's related to my cancer. So
I see.
I guess you could edit it out or not, but I'll tell you the story. My cancer is estrogen positive, which means having estrogen in my body can trigger cancer cells.
I see.
And so from the age of 24, I've been doing the dance of menopause. I've been premenopausal, perimenopausal, and now finally at the wonderful age of 43, I'm postmenopausal. So I've been dancing this, and I was told in my 20s that I should not try to get pregnant, and I wouldn't get pregnant. It would be dangerous for me. And I was, perimenopausal for much of my 20s. I was not well for some time, and I really thought that I had cancer again. And I called my oncologist in tears saying, it's back and I have cancer and I don't know what I'm going to do and I don't think I can do this again. And he listened and he said, you know what? Why don't you get a pregnancy test done? And I said, Tim, you're a horrible person.
How could you say that? How could you give me hope?
Exactly. And if I'm not going to speak to you again, and this is not nice of you.
And you were actually pregnant.
And I went home and I did a home kit, pregnancy kit, and I was pregnant. And I called him and I was like, you were right. And he's like, yes, I will wait for my apology now because we have a really great relationship.
How did he guess? Was it the symptoms?
I don't know. Maybe he's an optimist, or maybe he's known me for too many years and he knows all my drama.
She must be pregnant.
Yeah, he's like, that sounds like it. That sounds normal.
Wow.
So I was 11 weeks pregnant when I found out I was pregnant.
Wow.
So my son's the miracle child.
Oh, that's wonderful.
I can't remember the question.
I can't either. I'm just blown away. I was asking whether how do your family embrace your coaching?
Okay, so my husband and I, maybe having been through these kind of experiences, we don't believe in keeping secrets, in hiding things. We believe in having conversations and creating a safe space to catch you. Because life is hard.
Yes, yes.
And so
and not always fair.
No, it isn't. And we don't want him to be beaten down. We want him to have the resources and the resilience to be able to face life, to look life squarely, in the face and say, I know it's going to be beautiful and I know it's going to be amazing and I know I can do this. I've got this. So he was 2 years old when I went through it. When my husband shaved my hair after my head from the first chemo, my son sat on my lap and we explained it to him. I mean, he was 2 years old.
Does he remember?
He doesn't remember a lot. He's got pictures. But as he's grown up, it's not something we've hidden. So he knows mom's a cancer survivor. He's seen the pictures. He comes with me to South Africa for my scans, my PET scans. He's met my oncologist. He's given him the 3rd degree with his list of questions. So he's kind of grown up with that. Yes. He dyes his hair, for Pink November. So he gets it, he speaks about it, we speak openly about it. It's part of who we are as a family.
Yeah, and in many ways is your strength, I believe.
Yes, absolutely. And he gets more than most people the link between my cancer journey and the coaching I do. He gets what I do as a living, and he gets that this is the way it links. So he's just been phenomenal. My mom, my siblings, my brothers, I'm very blessed. Except for the cancers, in every area of my life, I am full. Life is full and I am blessed.
That's wonderful. And my last question for you, Varsha, would be, because I think you've got such a unique and wonderful story, and I think it's the first time that I've had a podcast since I've started that I've actually wanted to cry since the beginning. What would you say to those people who maybe are not going through cancer but are going through a dark time, they're battling with their shadows and thinking about maybe looking to coaching to help them find their meaning in life? What words of hope would you have for them?
Meanings of hope. That's a hard one. For people going through cancer, my message would be to remember that this too shall pass. That has brought a lot of perspective in my life. That this is just a moment, and I have my whole life. So this too shall pass. And there'll be another moment, and there'll be another moment, and it's just about landing in this moment. That matters. And maybe that would be the message to people that are in a hard time or are struggling.
Yeah.
Is that this struggle, this darkness, it's not all of who you are. It's just one part. And it's one part that makes you whole. There is hope.
Thank you so much. Thank you.